And we're here with Connor Ryan. Connor, what is up?
Evan, I'm doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. Doing great. It's been a heck of a past, few days for the Bruins. Beat the Maple Leafs in what was an electric game on Saturday night. And then, my goodness, that Flyers team. Oof. Oof. That team is
Not great.
bad. They
Not
could
great.
use Connor Bedard. I don't think they will be anywhere near the sweepstakes for it, but never know how the second half goes. Because oh man, feel bad for old Torts. That team is ooh, not a lot of star power over there anymore. So
Not great. I think John Torelson for however long he's going to be there for. I don't know how many seasons that'll be, but that team is in trouble.
that team is in a tough spot. And after the game, David Krejci's 1,000th game has a great game. After the game, says I like the mentality of this team. Says some other things, and then says the coaching change helped a lot. Which I guess he's vocalizing what we all kind of knew he was thinking, given his comments about Bruce Cassidy when he was over in Czechia. And I don't know. Interesting time to take a parting shot at Bruce Cassidy after a 6-0 win when you're first in the East. Interesting, don't you think?
The timing is of note, I would probably say, Evan. But again, kind of says the quiet part out loud, right? In terms of I think especially him, even when you heard his comments from when he was over in the Czech Republic talking about the fact that like Eric Halla had Taylor Hall and David Pastrnak on his line. I feel like this has been brewing for a little bit, so not exactly much of a surprise, especially when you look at just in terms of individually. David Krejci probably where he felt he fell into the Bruins lineup, especially over his last couple of years.
Yeah, and David Krejci doesn't. He's probably so. I wasn't there, but he's probably so sick of all the attention he was getting all day. And he just wanted to go home, and he just said, "You know what? Now I'm going to take my chance and say what I've wanted to say about Cassidy." But interesting comments. Quite a 1,000th game though, 6-0 win over Philadelphia. Who lots of battles between him and Philly over his many years in the NHL. But I want to get into a countryman of David Krejci, and that's Pavel Zacha. Late Saturday night after the game against the Maple Leafs, Bruins announced they re-signed or signed to an extension. Pavel Zacha, 4 years, 4.75 million per. We were kind of all waiting and wondering what Zacha would get, and I think we were all thinking that would probably happen in the offseason. Just given the Bruins don't have a ton of cap space and they have a lot of people to re-sign this offseason. But this is an interesting contract. Because as Sweeney said after, they like Zacha. They view him as someone who can kind of play all over the lineup. Um, you know, what were your initial reactions to this deal?
Yeah, definitely a bit of a surprise in terms of the timing of it getting announced legit right after a game ends. Like we're literally just waiting for Montgomery to
And a
talk.
game that Zacha missed an open
Yes,
net.
also
It
the
was
timing
also
in
good.
terms of a situation where I'm sure all those, as we've talked about multiple times before, Evan, the amount of New Jersey Devils fans who just creep on Twitter and be like, "This is the Zacha we know. Like this is what happened. He misses these open nets." Timing rough on Zacha's part. Again, I don't think he's going to be upset about the fact that he's getting paid 19 million and spending another 4 years in a team with a team like this. Probably, I guess initially you're a bit surprised in terms of the annual payout, right? I think it goes from what 3.75. I think it's a bump up in at least a million in terms of his average annual value. But all in considered, you can see why they approach this structure like this, where it's all right. They get this 1 year deal sorted out this year, where they already had a lot of cap maneuvering to do with fitting both Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci's contracts under the books as well. You kick that can kind of down the road a little bit and get to this point where you keep him here for 4 years. And something where I think when you look at how they envision Zacha, like you see where he falls on this team right now, and he's a very useful depth option, third line winger, can bump up to the lineup when needed, as seen in this past game against the Flyers, where he gets 2 goals and an assist. But I think you look at how the Bruins project this contract working out and Zacha's role with this team, you can see where they can find that value, whether it's in a year from now, if either Bergeron and Krejci or both of them aren't back, he could be a guy that could fall into a second line center spot. Again, is he the same player as those two? No, but I think you see in flashes here where he could be a guy that can give you 50, 60 points if in the right situation. Again, he's not a guy that thinks necessarily going to drive play, but if you also have him next to guys like Hall and Pasternak, you at least have a suitable option there. And when you look at just how bleak the Bruins center pipeline is in the years ahead, once Bergeron and Krejci retire, having a guy in Zacha who's 26 has value, has that skill that you see when he's out there on a shift, at least gives you an option, gives you a solid contingency plan. And if he continues to kind of find his game and becomes this guy that goes from first round, I don't know if you can call him bust, but to be an underachieving guy with 30-ish points, if he can become a middle six weapon that gives you 50 points, you sign him long term for under $5 million a year. Falls in line with, I think, what a lot of people are expecting out of that, where that kind of falls in line in terms of a market value for a player like that.
Yeah, the interesting thing about this deal also, it's less than Coyle. It's less than Charlie Coyle's money, which I'm a little surprised. Maybe Zacha did ask for more. My guess is maybe he did. But you would think, Charlie Coyle is the third line center. We don't know what the plans are for Coyle beyond this year, but he's never really stuck in the top six. You would think, if the Bruins had these, and they do have these aspirations for Zacha to be the future number 2 center, Zacha might say, hey, I should be paid more than the number 3 center. But whatever. I guess the Bruins, dodged a bullet there. I think, as you said, the AAV is a little high, but as we've seen this year, as you said, like he's produced, and it's under the radar stuff. Again, like you tweeted today, leads the team in 5-on-5 assists, and now again, when you look bigger picture, can a Bruins team with Zacha at second line center win a cup? I don't know. I think that remains to be seen. I don't think he's very dynamic. I think he's a very solid, plug and place player. I think he's, what you're getting from him. I don't think he's going to pop off for 80 points in a season. I could be wrong. We've been wrong before on this show, believe it or not. But I still think that, he's just, if you need him to be your number 2 center for a couple of years here, while you try to figure out what life is like post Bergeron and Krejci, not the worst option. Because as you said, and as people have seen, he's worked in the top 6 this year, whether you like it or not. He's worked. Again, I just think that, as you said, if you put Pasternak on his right, potentially Taylor Hall on his left, Jake DeBrusk, again, they are not short on depth on the wings. You get production out of him. Now, is he better than Erik Haula? My guess is yes. A little bit younger. But I don't know. I don't think it's, but again, that's a next year problem. That's a next year problem, Connor. We can't focus too much on next year. This year is just too good. But again, the Zacha deal, interesting timing. Still no Pasternak deal. Maybe this is sort of helps that along potentially. I know Sweeney offered no new updates. He doesn't usually negotiate through the media. So, wasn't a lot there in terms of that. But, with all this new money Zacha has, Connor, I think I almost kind of want to recommend he do something. And that's go over to our friends at HelloFresh. HelloFresh, farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. You've got New Year's goals, and HelloFresh is here to help you achieve them. Skip the grocery store and take control of your time and budget with delicious recipes delivered right to your door. HelloFresh also, Festive Fare Collection, features limited time recipes made with seasonal produce and premium proteins. Get out of the post-holiday slump with these elevated winter classics. Ooh, we already had one winter classic. Now you can have another. And you can do it from the comfort of your own home. I want to tell you about something. I recently made these one-pan mango salsa pork tacos with cilantro and sour cream. Chef's kiss. Chef Marinofsky at it again. These were very easy to do. They were very tasty. I really liked them. My roommates really liked them, and it was a hit. I really enjoyed these one-pan mango salsa pork tacos. I will be doing them again in the future. I love tacos, love mango, love salsa. Like flavor, just a blast of flavor in my mouth. And to make it on your own and in the comfort of your own kitchen, it's a pretty cool feeling. Go to HelloFresh.com/Bruins21 and use code Bruins21 for 21 free meals plus free shipping. Nick Ritchie Bruins meals. or excuse me, Nick Vici HelloFresh meals. These are not Bruins meals.
Yes.
The promo code is Bruins21. Go to HelloFresh.com/Bruins21 and use Bruins21 for 21 free meals plus free shipping. I've already had many friends who've gone out and done this, and they've really enjoyed it. And I enjoy cooking these, and it's fun. Chef it up. So
Woo.
all good. Fun stuff. Very fun stuff. So we talked a little bit about Pavel Zacha. So this show's all about centers, because we're going to get into another one with Bo Horvat, who is out with that horrendous Vancouver team that is really, I mean, it's tough to watch. I mean, they bring back, they signed JT Miller to that long deal. That kind of falls under the hurdle deal of like, why would you do this and not just commit to a full rebuild? I know they probably want to commit to a full rebuild, but I don't know if they fully have yet. Weird stuff going on out there. Bo Horvat, though, it's not stopped him from having a great season. Fifth in the NHL in goals right now with 30, which, talk about overperforming in a contract year. Pending UFA to be, carries a $5.5 million cap hit. I think it's easily the number one target for every team at this trade deadline. The problem is the cap hit. But it's interesting because with the Bruins, this is sort of like a Hampus Lindholm type situation. Where the Bruins had a need last year, obviously. They needed a legitimate top pairing left shot defenseman, or someone that, a left shot defenseman who could be in the top four, who, could handle big minutes and do all these different things. And they got that with Lindholm. Ultimately, Bergeron and Krejci will retire, unfortunately. They will retire. This is crazy. They will at some point in their career retire, probably sooner rather than later. Sorry to ruin your day, Connor, but it is true. And they're going to need a succession plan in place. And they still don't have one. Zacha feels like probably the 2C if Krejci did retire. But again, Bo Horvat, 27 years old, due for a huge payday. But it's going to take a lot to get him. It's going to take quite a bit to get him, to pry him from the hands of Vancouver. And I think there's a lot of things at play here. I think before we dive into the discussion, I think the cap is obviously a problem. That's a sizable cap hit. The Bruins don't have that. Not many teams do. But you're gonna have to get creative. And obviously the Bruins front office is very good at getting creative with the cap. So I they probably can find a way to do it. But at first glance, it's not an easy thing with the cap. But let's just put that aside for a bit. It's a big part, but let's just put it aside for a second. Most likely to get Horvat, you would definitely have to give up Lysell. You would definitely
or
Lorai. You're definitely giving up your 2023 first. You have to think that's in play, right? That's another first round pick you're not making. But it's a weird trade-off because we've talked for weeks about the deadline and said, the Bruins don't need anybody huge. This isn't really a this year move. This is more a move for the future. Now, again, if Bo Horvat goes to a team at the deadline and doesn't sign a long-term deal and is a free agent come July 1, like, go all in on him. But if he goes to a team and signs a long-term deal, well, that's another center you've, maybe could have improved your team with. What are your feelings on this? Because I think this is there's pros and cons.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's something where it's tough to even map out now, because I think it's move that's only made if you know what the next couple of dominoes are going to fall, or what they're going to be in the months ahead, right? Like, if you trade for Horvat, yes, do they necessarily need him? I guess not. It's not like, they have this gap like in their top four on defense. They desperately need a body in there. Like, Horvat would be an abundance of riches in terms of where he'd fit in this lineup, right? Is he just going to slot over to the wing somewhere? Is he going to be playing with? Is a guy on pace for 50 goals going to be with like Charlie Coyle's line, right? Like, you look at that, where he would fit. But it is true that you look at the years ahead, he could be a very good replacement for, either Bergeron or Krejci in that spot. But somewhere else, you have to figure out, you have to read the tea leaves and see where exactly, is Bergeron dead set on retiring? Is David Krejci dead set on that too? Because it could be a spot where next year, let's say you have Horvat on this team and you want to sign him long term. One, it's going to cost a bunch of money, which you're already committing a ton of money moving forward to most likely David Pastrnak, along with quite a few guys that you either have to make decisions on, whether it's a guy like Frederick, even like Clifton, what have you. There's a lot of players up in the air in terms of setting themselves up for really nice paydays. So if you want to commit, 8 years, 8 million or what have you to Horvat, you have to either know that Bergeron and Krejci aren't coming back or what. And even then, if that's the case, and Horvat can slot right in there and be a top six center for you, still got a whole bunch of financial juggling to do just to make that all work out. Because I think right now, if you're signing Pastrnak to 11 and a half, 12 million, you're already eating up a lot of your available cap space. So it's tricky, right? You look at the end result. If you get Horvat and you sign him long term, you answer one of the probably the biggest question marks surrounding this team in terms of how they can build in years ahead. You have Horvat with guys like McAvoy and Pastrnak and Olmark and Lindholm and all those guys. You at least again have that
Hall.
foundation in place. Yeah, Hall, Marchand, even you have a very good team still in place. It's just making all the rest of those pieces fall into place, especially with the cap and where this is going forward. Because if Bergeron feels like he's got another year or two, maybe that changes the dynamic and you roll with this same group and you look at guys like Clayton Keller in a year or two or something like that, right? Like those are the things where maybe you reassess the situation that you've been reassessing for years now. But again, it goes back to what Bergeron's value is to this team and that he's able to, he's staved off these really hard truths and decisions the Bruins have had to make over the years. So I think it all comes down to figuring out what those guys want to do and then assessing it then. Because again, would Bo Horvat be a great fit on this team? Yes, of course. Would he be great in the years ahead? Yep. But there's also a bunch of other teams that probably need a top six center right now and for the future as well. So to get him is not going to be an easy feat at all.
And my guess is if let's say they did sign him to an 8-year, $8 million deal or something along those lines, right? That you mentioned. And you also have Pastrnak too. You're sacrificing depth because a very underrated part of this Bruins team is, if I have this correct, Charlie Coyle is the highest paid center on this team against the cap. I'm right about this, right?
Yes.
Yeah. At 5.25. So your number 1 and 2 centers are costing you almost nothing. That's, I think, one of the things that people overlook on this team is Patrice Bergeron's value is incredible on the ice. He had another great Selke play on Saturday where he actually basically prevented Rasmus Ristolainen from scoring a goal on a 2-on-1. He rushed back for it. All these great things he does. Maybe the number one thing is he doesn't cost you anything this year, really. Not much. I mean, he does cost you something, but it's not what a number one center with his pedigree and value should be costing.
Right.
And that's helped you solidify depth in other spots. Same with Krejci. The same goes for Krejci. So again, if you need a guy like Horvat, you need someone like him for the future. Again, it just comes down to the cap and, can you get depth in other places going forward with guys like Frederick or whomever else, Clifton on D. I don't know. There's the other part of it that's like, well, a cup is all that matters this year. That's what you need. That should be the focus. You're going all in this year. First round picks be damned, top prospects be damned, like a cup or bust this year. And I get that. And I think that's a real thing. And if Horvat got dealt here and signed a long-term deal immediately, I don't know. I mean, and if they win a cup out of it, like I think would look back and go, even if Fabian Lysell, let's say he was dealt to Vancouver, becomes a, really terrific player in the NHL, you got to Stanley Cup out of this. Now, again, I'm speaking in hypotheticals, but I still think that there's that part of me that says, hey, they're going all, you need to go all in on this. I just don't know. They don't really have the pieces to trade to go all in, and they really don't have the cap space. And, again, is Horvat at left wing on the second line, like wasting him? I don't know. You also have to think about this, right? Let's say you get Horvat. You have Charlie Coyle at 5.25. You have Zacha at 4.75 now. So now you go from spending not much on center to now you're spending a ton. And so next year, if Bergeron comes back, is it Bergeron, Horvat, and then Zacha is a wing again? Like, that's the other thing is that, are you spending money in correct places? Is Zacha getting traded in this whole thing? I mean, there's so many parts of this. Because I saw somewhere that Vancouver might want NHL players in return. I could have been missing
Also
something
might
from
make that a little
Denver.
bit easier, all then consider. But again, it's also one of these things where you're probably also more. I get the financial part of it, where it's like, of course, people will be like, yeah, move Craig Smith and my contracts, which if that'd be that easy, that they would have probably done it by now. Again, it's tougher to have people take on those contracts, but let's say like Vancouver wants a guy like Grizzly or what have you. Again,
Or DeBrusque.
you save some of that cap space, but you've got guys that are key parts of this team right now, like especially DeBrusque. DeBrusque, before he broke his leg, was on pace for 36 goals. Grizzly, even though he's had probably a little bit of a slower start to the year coming back from his surgery, I think has put together a couple of really strong games recently, and seems like he's kind of settling into his role. And we know what his value is to this team. It's like, all right, you want to add probably a piece that puts you over the top this year, at least in Horvat, but you also don't want to subtract with key cogs that are already on this roster. So you almost would rather trade prospects and picks for a guy like Horvat. But again, how many times can you keep on going to the well, especially when you don't really know how that financial situation is going to map out with this team in the years ahead? It's, again, you see the merit behind, especially the long-term outlook of a Horvat deal, but there's just a lot of, bumps on the road along the way and stuff you have to have settle out first before it seems like it's a no-brainer kind of move.
And it's tough because, I mean, we can get into the game of what if, and you think about, well, what if, they don't get Horvat and then they kind of need a guy like that in the postseason and Lysell doesn't pan, and you have all these things, but it's, again, the circumstances outside of that. It's also the cap and things like that. So again, it's a weird situation. And as you said, there are going to be teams that need a guy like Horvat now. Like the Bruins don't need Horvat this year. They need him next year and in the years to come. So maybe you place a bet on him going to a team, not signing a long-term deal, and then getting a chance at him on July 1st. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's what you go with. Or something else falling into your lap, like a Taylor Hall did a few years ago, where it just, makes sense. Or who knows? Vancouver's not the smartest. Maybe it doesn't take a lot to get him a deal. Like, I don't know. We've seen crazy
Where
things
this
happen
year's
before.
been going, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's something to do with that. So again, I mean, I know no one wants to deal Lysell or Lowry, but again, if you take the cap out of it to help you win a cup, you got to do what you got to do. Interesting stuff all around. Lots of cap talk and center talk. Conor, what can people watch from you over at Boston.com?
Yeah, we're going to have you, again, cover every step of the way this season for the Bruins. Have a couple of stories from Monday's win over the Flyers, a nice column on David Krejci, and I think how, again, like that kind of encapsulates his value to this team. Of course, we'll have you covered throughout this year for the Bruins, but beyond that, we have plenty of stuff on the Patriots in this offseason, the Celtics, and the run they've had as well with the Bruins in terms of the two top dogs in the market right now. And, of course, the Red Sox and them trying to piece together this roster before the year starts. So we have you covered every step of the way, as always, over at Boston.com. So you can find my stuff there. If you want to follow me on Twitter as well, you can at ConorRyan_93.
Go do all that. For CLNS Media, I'm Marinofsky. You Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.